Spaniards, there's a couple things. They're very family centered. A lot of the times as we would walk around, you see families everywhere. They're all walking, holding hands. They love their families, and families are so close there. Another thing that kind of took me off guard is that a lot of the times these families, to hang out, they would go to a bar. They would go to a bar and watch a soccer game, and mom and dad would get a drink, and they would order a little tortilla de patata, which is a Spanish meal. And I remember walking down the street and seeing all these parents with their little kids in bars, and I thought, gosh, that seems a little strange. But it's just part of the culture. It's part of the Spanish culture, who they are. They walk around as families, and they go to their bar and they'll watch the soccer game, or they'll get dinner there. And it's totally normal. It's just part of the culture and who they are. I loved the public transportation system in Spain. It's incredible. It's very well organized. You could get literally anywhere you wanted to go via train or via bus. It was so well organized. They have a bullet train. They have a speed train there, the AVE, that would go 180 miles an hour. And so when we would have to go to Madrid, we could either take a 3-hour bus or we could take a 1-hour train ride. And so I feel like the transportation, even though some things they used propane and not everybody had computers and internet in their home, I feel like from a transportation aspect, they were on top of it. Spain is set for transportation. So kind of cool. Spaniards love their olives and their olive oil. There's beautiful olive tree fields everywhere. If you take a train somewhere, you'll see a big, beautiful olive tree field. And I talked to a man one time, and he would say, I don't go to bed without my spoonful of olive oil. And that was like his equivalent of ice cream for me. It's like I eat my ice cream and then I go to bed, but he would eat his olive oil and go to bed. And anything olives, they loved it. And that's another really cool thing that is part of their culture. These beautiful olive tree fields everywhere it was awesome. In Segovia, there was one time I remember we were walking down the street and we could hear kind of a faint bell, almost like a jingle bell that was ringing off in the distance. We couldn't really tell what it was, and as we kept walking around this hillside, we saw a couple of sheep that were walking. And as we got closer and closer, we realized that these sheep, they all had their bells around their neck. And as we kept walking, just more and more sheep came, and then there was a shepherd. And it was one of those other times that I felt like it just took me back in the past. Here was this shepherd walking his sheep on this hillside in Spain, and I thought, this is incredible. And he had his staff, and he had his his tunic, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Just a really cool cultural experience for me. So I think one thing that shocked me when I first got to Spain is that the Spaniards have very little personal space. I remember you would go and talk to a stranger, and they would grab you by the back of your neck, and they would bring you in so that you're staring nose to nose. And that, for a while, as you would start to talk to someone, they would, creep closer and closer to you. And I remember just slowly inching back and being really caught off guard from that personal space. But Spain is all, only the wealthy people have homes that are separate. So everything in Spain is all apartments. Everything's built up. And so I think they're used to not having personal space. And so it's totally normal and totally natural for them to be right up in your face right there and talking to you. And I remember when I got home that I realized that I had developed that habit myself, that when I went to talk to someone, I would get up right close in their face, and I noticed that they would kind of slowly inch back. And I think that's just a difference in cultures that we have. As you and I we have our personal space, but in Spain, it's like they're all together, they're all really close. Everything in Spain is built kind of in these tightly compacted cities. So you don't necessarily even need a car to get around. You walk to get your groceries. Everybody has these little like half suitcase things that they take to the grocery store, and they fill their suitcases with all their groceries, and then they just walk them home. Unless you need to go to a mall or something, then you can pretty much get to any and everything all from your apartment. Also in Spain, when I served in Segovia, they used propane tanks to heat their water, and they would come out with these big orange propane tanks, and they would bang them together, and that's how you knew that the propane guy was there. And so you'd have to hurry and run and disconnect it from your water heater, take your empty one down and give him your empty one, give him some money, and then he would give you the new propane tank. And a lot of the times those propane tanks would run out. So you'd be in the shower and all of a sudden the water would get cold. And you'd, hey, Elder Clark, can you go and shake the bombona? You'd have to shake it to get the gas, and then you could hear the water heater like heat up again. But it almost felt like it was like a blast from the past. Like, who doesn't use plumbed gas, you know? But it was kind of a cool little unique thing about Spain. And I remember, you know, running out, it would be 10 degrees outside, and you'd have to run out with your bombona because you'd hear them clanging them downstairs, and you'd have to run out in your shorts and your t-shirt and give him a bombona. And I'm sure he thought, oh, these crazy Americans, what are they doing coming out here in their shorts? And you know what, I think Alcala is probably one of my most vivid memories, just because it was my greenie area. It was my first area. It's known for it has one of the oldest universities in Europe there, which is where a lot of students will go and do a study abroad, is in Alcala. But I remember, like, Alcala has the old cobblestone paved roads. At the university they have the bell that rings at every hour, and they have the big storks that have built nests on top of the university, and it's just, you just feel like you're walking back in history. And I remember doing that, walking down the streets thinking, this street and this building is older than my whole country. And it was surreal. It was just an awesome experience. Most of the transportation in Alcala was just by bus or walking. I remember when I first got to Spain, at the time I wasn't a huge soccer fan. And I remember on Saturdays we would go and play soccer with some of the youth in the ward. And I remember I considered myself an athletic person. I played basketball in high school, and you know, I could keep my feet under me. But in Spain, I would have a little 10-year-old boy that would just come and run circles around me with a soccer ball. And it was so frustrating for me, because I thought, I'm athletic, and how are these little 10-year-old boys running circles around me? But soccer is religion in Spain. I mean, they love, love, love soccer. If there was a big soccer game going on, you couldn't go and knock doors. You couldn't talk to people. Everybody was in a bar. I think this is a reflection of the people of Spain, but if you knocked on a door during a big soccer game, they would tell you, one, no, we're not interested, but would you like to come in and watch the soccer game with us? And I remember thinking that the people were so incredibly hospitable. They were a little bit closed to the religion, but they would let you in their home as a complete stranger to watch a soccer game with them. So I would say that Segovia is probably my other kind of favorite city in Spain. Like I mentioned, that it has a big aqueduct, it has a cathedral, it has a castle, and it's just kind of what I envision old Roman European city to be. It's just, the aqueduct is incredible, and we would walk by it every day. And every day I would walk by it, I would think, oh, we're walking by this huge Roman aqueduct. That's all still intact, and it's incredible to be an American living in somewhere abroad like that, in such a beautiful place that has so much history to it. So the weather in Segovia, I would say, is a lot like it is here. Warm summers and colder winters. The city is kind of laid out around these main features. So you have your aqueduct, which is right by the cathedral, and then kind of at the tip of the city you have this big beautiful castle, and down at the base of the castle is this big park, just this big field of grass. It's beautiful. Segovia is known for cochinillo, which cochinillo is basically, it's a baby pig that is filleted out, so its legs are going out on each side, and they cook it in an oven. And it's famous for the fact that it's so tender that you can cut it with a plate. You don't even need a knife. So they fillet this little baby pig out, whatever it's called, I don't know, whatever it's called, a baby pig. They put their baby pig out, put it in the oven. It's like the most tender meat you've ever had. We had it once when actually a family from Alcala came and took us out to dinner. And that was the one and only time I had cochinillo, because it's pretty expensive, but it's incredibly delicious. So Segovia is famous for its cochinillo. Badajoz, which is a city that I served in, which I would compare to like a very hot, almost like a hot, dry, like somewhere in Texas maybe. I mentioned that I got transferred there during the summer, and it was scorching. It was just incredibly hot. But the people in Badajoz, they also had a different way of speaking. Because they were more from the south, they would almost sing a little bit when they spoke. So it was cool for me to almost learn another dialect, serving in this relatively small country. It was fun to hear the way that other people talked in different parts of the country. So when I was in Spain, when I was in Madrid, the March 11th bombings actually happened. And I was serving in Segovia at the time. And it was actually a train that was going from Alcala to Madrid. And I remember being super worried because I knew members that would take that train into Spain every day. And it was a big deal. It was, Spain's equivalent of our September 11th attacks. I learned later that a family that I was really close with, that he was on the train right after the one that was bombed. So that was kind of a scary experience. Spain has kind of an interesting political mix. So there's Barcelona, which they've outlawed bullfighting, which is such a part of the culture of Spain. They've done bullfights forever. So those are still allowed in Madrid, but Barcelona has banned them. Just again because of some of the political differences. I think that shows the political differences between the two countries, or the two cities, even though they're in the same country, you have such a political diversity there. And then on the northern part of Spain, you have Catalonia, which those people actually don't want to be a part of the country of Spain. And so you have these terrorist groups that are in Catalonia that will, or the Basque, it's the Basque people, País Vasco, and they will do things to try to separate themselves from Spain. So it was actually the Basque people, some Basque terrorists, that had planted the bombs on the trains that were going to Madrid.